Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. This happened in 2018, and I still have no idea how to explain it. I'd like to think it was a misunderstanding, a technical error, but it doesn't add up. I don't even want to. That day I was at my house, a random Saturday. My dad had gone to work early, was driving a trailer, and had a long drive. Around 2:40 p.m. I'm lying down watching videos on my cell phone when a call comes in. Screen, Dad. Normal response. Hello. Silence. Then a strange noise, like when you are between two radio stations. And then his voice, but strange. As if it were more serious, as if it were very far away. Where are you? He told me with a serious but nervous tone. At home, why? You're sure? Yeah, what's up? And that was the signal. Literal. Dry cutting. I try to call again. Nothing. I send a message. Not delivered. I thought the sign on the highway must have been cut off. Unknown. 10 minutes later the door rings. It's my dad. In a work uniform, sweaty like I'd been driving all day, because I got angry and said, "Did you call me a while ago?" He looks at me confused. When? 10 minutes ago. You told me, where are you? And then it was cut. He swears, he didn't call me. I didn't even have a sign of where I was going. I was in a mountain range, not even for text messages. We checked his call history, nothing. Neither outgoing nor incoming. I tried to laugh nervously at him, but he was silent for a moment, and then he said something that left me cold. I swear while I was driving. I thought you were gone. I felt a strange anguish. As if something had happened to you, but for no reason. I even got a little sidetracked by that. We let it go. But days later, I noticed that the call log was on my cell phone, which lasted 18 seconds. With the exact time. With your number. Until today I have it saved, without explanation. It was not a joke, nor a network error. The voice was his voice. But there was something different, like he wasn't my dad today. As if it were one I had already missed. Edit. Sorry if some parts were confusing. English isn't my first language, and I translated the story from my native language. I know that made some grammar or phrasing weird. Just wanted to share something that's been stuck in my head for a long time. Here's a few things I want to clarify. My dad was working in the mountain range, about 30 minutes from home. He was already heading back, but his phone didn't have signal or mobile internet. He never liked paying for that stuff anyway. I didn't get mad at him, just freaked out a little, but I thought the way I translated it made it sound like I was angry. I still have the phone where I got the call, but I haven't found the charger in years. Story 2. So, I've been lurking here for a while, and have read so many accounts of things that I have also experienced. I finally feel less like I'm losing the plot zany face beaming face with smiling eyes, and more like it's actually real stuff that I've seen. Also, sorry for the longness of this minor glitch story, but it's the one that was my red/blue pill moment. So I go over the minor details in my own head quite often, laughing face, and have never had anyone else to share it with other than my sister, who just dismisses it now zany face. I was around 28 and had been through a bad relationship, so my daughter and I had moved back in with my mom while I got myself back on my feet. Incidental. My little sister had moved to a different town around the same time, which was about a 2-hour drive away from where my mom lived. She had a very young son, around 2 years old, and was 9 months pregnant when she found out her husband was cheating on her and he left her for someone else. She totally fell apart, and this triggered her labor. She had no one else around her to help or look after her or her son while she had the new baby, and the husband was AWOL. I managed to get a friend to drive me straight up to her, without any thinking or time to even pack a bag. This is sort of relevant. Luckily my daughter could stay with my mom without any trouble, so I was able to go straight to my sister's and help with her son, and be there for her too. Very long story shortish. I stayed with her for 3 and a bit weeks. I literally borrowed her clothes, not sure what I was thinking looking back, but luckily we are very similar sizes, laughing face. And we managed between us a new baby, little upset and confused 2 years old, and a lot of crying and stress in general as she got her head round her husband leaving. I had a plug, or ear stretcher, that I'd had in my ear the day I went up to her, and it was quite unique in that it had a picture of a spiritual/religious figure on it that was quite unique to find on that kind of jewelry. All my jewelry tends to be unique or a bit out of the ordinary, and a lot of it comes from sites where people hand make it or they have customized things. This was one of my favorites, and I never took my stretchers out without putting a different one in, as I heal ridiculously fast, and this is the same with all my piercings, So I subconsciously check up on my stretcher, and my nose stud in particular, quite a lot through the day, and normally have spares in my bag somewhere when I go away just in case. But as I didn't pack a single thing, I had no spares this trip. My sister's little boy was fascinated with this plug, and so he would look at it a lot, staring closely at my ear, and tell me he could see the lady in my head, which made us laugh. This became our little routine, particularly in the morning, and at his bedtime, every day that I was there. When I left to go back to my mum's, my sister had washed and tumbled the clothes I turned up in, and all was good with the world. We said goodbye, and I got a taxi to the local train station to go home. On the taxi ride, I subconsciously felt my ear to fiddle with my stretcher, and it wasn't there. Also, the hole it should have been in felt different to how it normally felt, almost like I hadn't had anything in it for a while. This was weird in itself, as I check it a lot, and my nephew had said goodbye to the lady in my head and did his usual point and poke when I said goodbye, so I knew it had been there right before I left. I checked the seat and the top I was wearing, and then called my sister and asked her to check around, as it might have fallen out when we were hugging. I checked the taxi again when I got out, left my forwarding details with the driver in the vague hope someone would find it on the seat, and or my sister would discover it in her hallway. My nephew had an eagle eye, and so if it was there he would spot it, laughing face. When I got back to my mum's, I put another one in as soon as I got in, but the hole was very tight, and I had to overstress it to get the plug in, which was fast healing even for me, but didn't overthink this. Fast forward around 2 and a bit years. It had never turned up. I had been a bit sad, as I couldn't get another one, but it had no sentimental value other than it now had become a lovely memory of my nephew talking to the lady in my head, laughing face. I had searched my clothes again a few times and resigned myself to the fact that it must have fallen out in the taxi somehow. At this point I was around 30-ish and still living with my mum. Getting on my feet didn't go as planned, lol. I was up very late, 2 a.m.-ish, working and typing up a long piece, so was pretty tired, and something fell from the ceiling, or at least from above me, directly above my head, and bounced off my head, and then bounced/rolled across my desk a little, and then stopped about 6 inches away from my laptop. It was a stretcher. I figured it must have somehow popped out of my ear. As I say, I was quite tired, so I felt my ear, and no, the current stretcher was still there. I picked it up and immediately dropped it again. It was the lady in my head stretcher. After inspecting it, taking pictures of it and sending them to my sister, freaking out a bit, and then checking it all over again in the morning, it was definitely the stretcher I had lost in a town 2 hours away more than 2 years ago. Story 3. I've always been a vivid dreamer. Since I was a child, my nights have never been quiet. My dreams have ranged from whimsical and joyful to unsettling and mysterious, often so detailed that I wake up convinced I've lived a second life while asleep. Over the years, I've learned to accept that my dreams aren't just figments of my imagination. They are experiences. Sometimes they feel like messages. Sometimes they feel like warnings. And sometimes, like in this story, they feel like something else entirely, something that doesn't fit into the neat boxes of science, religion, or logic. Listening to other people's stories, through podcasts, forums, late-night conversations, has brought me an odd kind of comfort. It's reminded me that I'm not alone, that there are others who felt the fabric of reality twist just slightly, who've seen glimpses of something beyond the veil, who've walked into a room only to find something inexplicably out of place, a ringing bell in an empty house, a missing object that reappears years later, a stranger who knows your name. This is the first time I've written one of my stories down. Not because I haven't had them. Trust me, I could fill notebooks, but because this one has clung to me for years. It involves a dream I had just 2 days before my mother passed away. A dream so vivid and beautiful that it felt more like a visitation. And what happened afterward, the strange painting, the fall from the wall, and the impossible rearrangement of space, still leaves me questioning what exactly I experienced. I don't claim to have answers, only a story, one that starts with a dream and ends with what I can only describe as a glitch, whether in memory, time, or something far stranger. This experience changed how I view death, connection, and the boundaries of what's physically possible. Maybe it will resonate with someone else out there, the way their stories once resonated with me. Story 4. I've always been drawn to the strange and unexplained. Since I was a little girl, I used to beg my mom to tell me stories about ghosts, aliens, cryptids, and all the things that most parents probably wouldn't want their kids thinking about before bed. But my mom never shut it down. If anything, she encouraged it. She's always been sensitive to things that don't exactly live in this dimension, if that makes sense. She's seen things, felt things, and when she shared them, I sat on the edge of my seat, wide-eyed and terrified. And yeah, I'd get scared. I'd go to bed afraid of the dark every single night. I'd say the rosary just to calm my heart and fall asleep. But even with all the fear, the curiosity has always been stronger. I've always believed in the something else. Fairies, ghosts, mermaids, portals, the undead. You name it, I've considered it. It's like I was wired that way. And with my mom being how she is, the two of us together, we're like an antenna. When we're around each other and talking about these kinds of things, it's like the air changes. It gets still and electric at the same time. Static. Something always happens. So, it makes sense that this happened in Hawaii. It was October 2013. We were on a trip to Maui, just my mom and me. We had planned a beach day and woke up early, excited and relaxed. The weather was perfect, not too hot, just enough breeze to make everything feel like it was moving in slow motion. We packed up the snorkel, the paddleboard, some snacks, and headed out. As we walked along the beach path, I remember my mom saying something about Pele, the goddess of fire and volcanoes. In Hawaiian tradition, you're supposed to show respect to her and the land. Don't take anything that isn't yours. Don't assume you're in charge just because you're a visitor. We both agreed to be mindful, like always. We talked about the ocean, about what we might see. I said I hoped to see a turtle while snorkeling, maybe some fish, and I was half joking when I said I'd love to swim like a mermaid. Maybe even meet one. Who knows? That's just me. I always say things like that and mean them a little more than I should. We got to the water. She grabbed the snorkel gear, and I took the paddleboard. We moved out into the bay and eventually drifted apart, her staying near the rocks, me heading out a bit farther. I was rusty on the board, and I kept hitting this current that kept knocking me off. I'd fall in, climb back up, shake it off, and keep going. Then, on like the third or fourth fall, I got back on the board, sat down, and realized something was wrong. My ring. It was gone. It was a simple silver ring, nothing fancy, but I loved it. I wore it on my right ring finger, and it had been with me through a lot. I felt an instant pit in my stomach. I looked around on the board, in the water, under the surface. Nothing. The ocean floor was just sand, shells, and rocks, and I knew the odds of finding it were next to none. But I still tried. I paddled back over to my mom and asked to use the snorkel. She agreed, and I dove back into the water, determined to search every spot I had fallen in. I dove and swam and dove. Over and over. I didn't see it. Meanwhile, I kept glancing at my mom, who was having a hard time trying to balance on the paddleboard herself. She'd fall off, laugh, climb back up, wobble, and fall again. It was honestly kind of hilarious. I was amused by the whole thing, even while I was frustrated about losing the ring. Eventually, I gave up. I had to. How was I going to find a ring, one little ring, in the vast bay of Maui? I swam back to her and climbed up on the board. We sat there, side by side, letting the waves rock us gently. I told her I was sad, that I had lost my ring, that I had looked everywhere. She was sympathetic, and we sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, maybe it was an offering. Maybe it was meant to go back to the earth. Maybe the gods wanted it. And I nodded. I was okay with that. I didn't love the idea, but I could live with it. I was letting it go. And that's when I looked down. Story 5. This story is hard to talk about. Before I start, I just want to say, this does mention self-harm, more specifically, an attempt to end my own life. If that's not something you want to hear about, I completely understand. Please take care of yourself, and maybe skip this one. So, back in 2018, I was in a really bad place. The kind of place where everything feels like it's pressing in on you. I won't go into all the reasons why. I'd rather not relive them in detail. But let's just say I'd been carrying a lot for a long time. And one day, something inside me just gave out. At the time, I had been prescribed Seroquel. 300 milligrams tablets. I'd taken one when I first got the prescription, and if you've ever taken Seroquel, it hits hard. That one pill knocked me out cold. It felt like I had been hit with a tranquilizer dart. I didn't like how strong it was, so I told myself I'd talk to my doctor about lowering the dosage. But of course I forgot. So the pills just sat there, untouched. Until that night. There were 29 pills left in the bottle. That's 8,700 milligrams. More than enough. Probably too much. And I remember taking them. I remember swallowing them, one after the other, like it was just a matter of fact. No panic. No hesitation. No drama. That was the part that scared me the most in hindsight. How calm I felt doing it. Like I had made peace with it. After that, I laid down in bed, stared at the ceiling for a moment, and closed my eyes. I was ready. I knew I wasn't going to wake up. That was the whole point. But then I did wake up. I opened my eyes, and it was 8 p.m. on the same day. I looked around the room, confused. I remembered everything, downing the pills, lying down, the whole thing. But now I was just awake. Not groggy. Not dizzy. Not sick. I didn't feel anything except a weird sense of alertness. It was like waking up from a nap, not from what should have been a fatal overdose. I sat up slowly, still trying to process what was happening. I looked at my nightstand, and the bottle was gone. Not empty. Gone. I got up and walked out of my room. Everyone in the house, my family, my sister, her husband, were all just going about their day like nothing had happened. They saw me and said hello, totally normal. I felt like I was in a dream or something, like I had slipped into a version of reality that looked like mine but wasn't. I went back to my room and started searching for the bottle. Nothing. I checked the trash. I checked under the bed. I checked the drawers. Then I opened my phone and pulled up my prescriptions to see if I had any record of the Seroquel. There was nothing. No record of me ever being prescribed Seroquel. No refill history. No dosage instructions. It was like it had never existed. But I remembered it. I remembered taking the pills. I remembered how heavy they felt in my hand, how dry my throat got halfway through, how I laid down afterward and accepted it. That memory is still crystal clear. And yet, nothing remained. For a while I let it go. I didn't want to think too hard about it. I was alive, and for some reason that was enough. But a couple of months later, something else happened. Something small, but it added fuel to the fire. My family and I were sitting around talking about old vehicles we'd had in the past. My dad used to have a 1970 Chevy truck, gold with white trim. He loved that thing. Had it all through my high school years. Eventually my brother wrecked it. I remember that clearly. So I asked, whatever happened to the orange 71 Chevy you had for a few months after that? Everyone stopped and looked at me. My dad said, "Do you mean the gold 70? I said, "No. I know the 70 was gold. But after that, you had an orange 71. Automatic transmission. The hubcaps didn't even fit right. You weren't happy with it." They just stared at me like I'd gone off the deep end. My dad said, "I've never had an orange 71. After the gold one got wrecked, I had a white cargo van." I was stunned. Story 6, Part 1. This story isn't the craziest thing that's ever happened to me, but it's definitely the one that stuck with me the longest. It's been over a decade now, and I still think about her. The girl across the street. The girl who looked exactly like my sister, and I mean exactly. This happened in either 2010 or 2011. I was 18, my sister was 13 or 14. That was the year our city's baseball team won the World Series, and the whole place went wild. The kind of celebration where schools close, traffic stops, and you're suddenly best friends with everyone wearing your team's colors. My family, my mom, dad, sister, and I, headed downtown to watch the victory parade. We got there about 15 minutes before it started, and somehow managed to snag a spot right in the front. We were lucky. I've always been a people watcher. I love scanning the crowds and just noticing stuff, the way people move, what they wear, the weird little expressions on their faces. So I was doing that, just looking around at the sea of people on the other side of the street, when I saw her. At first, I didn't even realize what I was looking at. I just noticed someone standing across from us, roughly lined up with my sister, and I did a double take. The girl was turned sideways, talking to someone in her group, but when she faced forward again, I swear to God, I thought I was looking at my sister. Same skinny build. Same face. Same glasses. Same t-shirt. Same color jeans. The only difference was that her hair was pushed back, and my sister always let hers fall in her face at that age. That was it. I just stood there frozen. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I was trying to figure out if I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. Then I nudged my parents and said, "Hey, that girl over there looks exactly like Brenna." They looked. My mom's eyes went wide immediately. My dad squinted, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's weird." And it was more than just they kind of look alike. It was like looking in a mirror. We all saw it. And then my sister looked up and saw her too. And here's the really freaky part. The other girl looked up at the exact same time and saw my sister. And they just stared at each other. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. They just stared, like they were both trying to figure out if the other was real. The other girl's parents noticed us staring, and then they noticed my sister. I could tell they were just as weirded out. They didn't say anything, but their faces said everything. They saw it too. Me being me, I had my digital camera with me. This was before smartphones had the kind of zoom that could handle anything beyond arm's length. I zoomed in and took a photo of her. Snapped it fast, like I was doing surveillance. I remember thinking, no one is going to believe this unless I have proof. The photo was perfect. It looked like a close-up of my actual sister. It still gives me chills to remember it. Then the parade started. We got distracted by the floats and the music and the players riding by. I looked back across the street a minute or two later, and the girl and her family were gone. I didn't see them leave. They just weren't there anymore. Story 7, Part 2. We never saw the girl again that day. Not in the crowd, not walking away, not standing anywhere else nearby. 1 second she was there, staring back at us, and then she was just gone. The rest of the day went by like normal. We cheered, we waved at the team buses, we bought those plastic noisemakers that break after 10 minutes. But that moment kept rattling around in my head. Later that night, when we got home, I uploaded all the photos from my camera onto Facebook. Remember, this was back when people still made albums and actually looked through each other's pictures. I made a whole album for the parade, pictures of the floats, the confetti, the crowd, and that one photo of the girl who looked like Brenna. I remember exactly what I captioned it. You may think this is Brenna, but it's not. Isn't that freaky? People went nuts over it. The comments flooded in. OMG, she looks exactly like her. That's so creepy. You're sure that's not just her twin? My sister's friends commented too. They were weirded out. It wasn't just me imagining things, other people saw it too. I didn't think much more about it after that. It was one of those weird things you bring up once in a while like a family inside joke. Remember that time we saw Brenna's twin at the parade? We talked about it maybe once a year, if that. Fast forward a few years. I was telling a friend about it. Just one of those late-night conversations where you're trading weird stories. I said, hold on, I'll pull it up. I still have the photo on Facebook. I opened the app, went to my albums, scrolled down to the parade album, found all the usual photos, the team, the crowd, the confetti. But the photo of the girl? Gone. I thought maybe I'd misfiled it. Maybe I put it in a different album by mistake. I checked my mobile uploads, my random folder, even the Untitled album where I dumped stuff when I didn't feel like organizing. Nothing. I checked my camera roll. Nothing. I searched the Facebook comments to see if anyone had tagged it or mentioned it by name. Nothing. All the photos from that day were still there, except that one. I stared at the screen for a long time. I know I uploaded it. I know it was there. People commented on it. My sister saw it. My parents saw it. It was real. So where did it go? I've never found that photo again. I've checked every old backup, every cloud folder, even old email attachments I might have sent to friends back when we passed around weird stuff for fun. Nothing. It's like that one image, arguably the most important one I took that day, was quietly removed from my life. And I know how that sounds. I know people will say, well, maybe you imagined posting it. Maybe you thought you took the picture but didn't. But I didn't just remember it. Other people saw it. My sister saw it. My parents. Her friends. Strangers on Facebook. There were comments. Reactions. It was there. Story 8. It was a normal day. Nothing strange at all. No weird dreams the night before, no déjà vu, no static in the air. I was at my dad's house, where I had stayed a lot growing up. I knew that house inside and out. Every corner, every creaky floorboard, every weird little paint chip or crack in the ceiling. It's not a huge house, but it's got a long hallway that leads to the bedrooms. I've walked that hallway probably 1,000 times since I was a kid. Anyway, I was heading down the hallway to grab something from my room. I wasn't in a rush, just walking, kind of half on autopilot. But as I got to the end of the hallway, I noticed something was different. There was an opening, a doorway I'd never seen before. It was just there, at the very end of the hall, like it had always been there. But I knew it hadn't. I stopped walking and just stared. I wasn't scared exactly, just confused. Like when you see something familiar, but it's suddenly off by one detail. Like if someone moved your front door 4 inches to the left. The doorway led into a room. I could see inside, dim lighting, muted gray-blue walls, carpet that looked different than the rest of the house. There was a short hallway leading into it. I thought maybe I was just misremembering something. Maybe the house had been renovated, and I forgot. That didn't make sense, but I needed to know. So I stepped in. It was quiet inside. Too quiet. I walked slowly, looking around. The air felt dense, like when you walk into a room that hasn't been opened in a long time. I don't remember any furniture, but I swear there was a window on the far wall, except it didn't show anything outside. Just light, like a bright, white fog behind the glass. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. I wasn't thinking about anything profound. I was just confused. I remember blinking a few times and trying to figure out why it felt so wrong in there. It wasn't scary, but it was definitely off. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I turned around and walked back out. I went to my room, grabbed whatever it was I needed, and came back down the hallway. And when I got to the end, there was no doorway, no room, just the blank wall that had always been there. I froze. I turned around, walked back, and came forward again, just to make sure I wasn't mixing up where I had seen it. Nothing. I even tapped on the wall, like maybe there was a hidden panel or something. Still nothing. I didn't say anything to my dad. I didn't mention it to anyone for years. And honestly, what would I say? Hey, I walked into a room in your house that doesn't exist anymore. Sounds completely unhinged. But here's the thing, I remember what it felt like in there. I remember the soft sound of my footsteps on that weird carpet. I remember the smell, which I can only describe as quiet. I remember how the light through the window didn't look real. And I remember how, when I walked out, I didn't feel like I had exited a normal room. It's like I stepped into something that wasn't part of this house, or maybe wasn't part of this version of the house. And every time I visit now, I look down that hallway. I always check. I always wonder, what would have happened if I'd stayed longer? Story 9. I was cooking and needed tongs to flip chapatis. Now we eat chapati every day, so I keep tongs near the stove. When I started cooking, I realized my tongs were not at the place they should have been. I searched everywhere. Then I asked my husband to help me find the tongs. He searched everywhere. Jokingly, he even searched our wardrobe. We even searched dustbin just in case. After half an hour of failed search, I cooked without tongs, and we started watching a movie, which was a mystery thriller. About 1 hour later, we both went in kitchen to make some tea, and boom. Things were exactly at the side of the stove. Like literally the place me and my husband searched for at least 20 times. It was right in front of our eyes. I looked at my husband, and he looked at me, shocked and speechless. We are still shocked. How did this happen? How can something just vanished and came back? Story 10. This morning, I took my mother's car to work. My co-worker's having a granddaughter, and I told her she could have my bassinet, and I would bring it to work today. This morning, we unattached the 4 legs from the bassinet and loaded it into my mother's car. I specifically remember thinking, oh, the feet of the legs are a little dirty, but it's not that bad, right after I placed them in the trunk. I called my co-worker when I arrived to work, so we could move the bassinet and legs to her car. She didn't answer, so I locked the car and headed into work. Around lunchtime, she was ready to get the bassinet from my car. I opened the trunk, and the legs are nowhere to be found. I thought maybe I put the legs in my car trunk instead of my mom's. When I got home, the legs are neither in my mother's trunk or my trunk. They're just gone. My head is spinning. I'm just at a loss for words. No one would steal just legs, without the bassinet attachment. And I've looked all around the house for the damn legs just in case. My brain hurts. I feel weird. WTF happened? Story 11. This happened about 2 years ago, and I was so blown away I took notes and told my wife about it, so I still have the notes on my phone. My 5-year-old son was pretty typical for his age, always goofing around, never serious, always working some angle to negotiate treats or buying whatever thing was at the top of his list this week. Kids have a selfish worldview, and that's mostly understandable because they haven't matured yet. So when my son asked me to go for a walk, just the 2 of us, I immediately laughed and thought, okay, what's he going to ask for? We start walking and I ask, what's on your mind, buddy? He said, nothing really, I just want to have some time to be with you and be peaceful and be out in nature. Wow, okay, this is progress, I thought. Then he said, I want you to know you're the best dad I've ever had. You really do help me and my sister a lot, and you're really very nice, even though we don't usually tell you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, and that I want to be near you always. By this point, the only reason I wasn't completely crying my eyes out is that I thought it was some kind of a joke or lead up to ask for something. This was totally out of character, especially at this age. I managed to croak out something like, I'm really glad to hear that, and I love you very much. Then we just enjoyed the rest of the walk. It really felt like for a moment I was speaking to a soul who has had several lives. You're the best dad I've ever had. and wanted to speak directly to me instead of play the role of a child. I'm so glad it happened, and it's something I will never forget. Later he went right back to being the same old goofy kid that I love. Story 12. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening, asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed, so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armoire upstairs too. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire about 6 steps up when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire, and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing, and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, "How do you know about the armoire?" I then proceeded to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall, and I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. Story 13. For a few weeks before this, while out driving, I've observed pedestrians standing at the traffic lights who will reach into their pocket and look at their phone as they're walking across the road when the light goes green. Nothing significant or strange about this, just one of those mundane things you notice while going about your day. Today I was driving with my daughter, and we stopped at a red light at a crossing, and there was a man standing there. Nothing out of the ordinary, denim jacket, black cap, glasses, around 6 square feet. I thought I'd try to weird out my young daughter. She's 5, so I knew I was going to blow her damn mind. So I said, "See that man? When the walking man goes green and he starts to walk across, he'll reach into his pocket and pull out his phone and start looking at it. Watch and see." As he walks across, he reaches into his pocket, but then immediately takes his hand out and looks and points right at me with his mouth open, smiling, like a gotcha stance. Of course my daughter found this absolutely hilarious, and I sat there completely mind blown. I must have sat there in silence looking at him walk across for the next 10 seconds. I drove on and had a look at him as I drove past, and he was smirking/laughing. I've been playing it through my head all day. The windows were up. The radio was on. I wasn't shouting. My voice was not even remotely raised. He must have been about 15 to 20 feet away from me. I can't figure out at all how he could have heard me. It's literally impossible. How did he know I was trying to predict he'd reach into his pocket for his phone? The only even remote possibility I can think of is that he has had the same observation as me and thought I might be thinking the same thing, so just went for it. But realistically, what are even the chances of this? Story 14. Me, M26, and my girlfriend, F25, have been living together in an apartment for 2.5 years. Everything has been normal until quarantine started, around 4 weeks ago, when I started noticing some odd things. For instance, for the last 3 weeks or so, my GF has been putting sugar in her morning coffee, while throughout our entire relationship, she's always been very much against it. It may seem like a small detail, but she's always been complaining about how I don't know what real coffee is since I put quite a lot of sugar. On the first day that I saw her drinking coffee with sugar, I asked her why would she do that, and she looked at me weirded out and said something like, "What are you talking about? I've always been putting sugar in my coffee." I felt a bit confused for a moment, but then we started talking about some other things, so I didn't think any more about it until the morning after, when she did the exactly same thing, and had once again the same reaction. Fast forward a few days, and another odd thing happened. We were having sex, and she suddenly suggested a sex pose that we had already tried once, but it had gone wrong, and it hurt her a lot, so we had simply decided not to try it anymore. Naturally, I was very surprised with her suggestion, and reminded her about the time when it went wrong, and she just completely dismissed it, saying that I probably mixed her up with some ex-girlfriend, or that I was just tripping. We then did the pose, and we actually enjoyed it. Today, the weirdest thing happened, which is the reason I'm writing this post. In the afternoon, I was working at home. I'm employed as a PhD student at the computer science department of a university, when my GF asked me what's up with a guy who I've never heard of before. I asked her who is she referring to, and she said, "Well, it's that colleague of yours who you always talk about, the one from the company where you are employed at." I froze and asked her to repeat, and she said the exactly same thing all over again. Then I told her that I don't work at any company, nor have I ever worked at any company, since I started a PhD straight after my master's degree. At this point, she also completely froze, and we were just staring at each other completely confused and shocked for a few moments. She then asked me WTF is going on, and I reminded her about the coffee thing, and about the sex pose, and that I don't know anymore what is going on. At this point, she started crying too, and asked what is wrong with us. Nor she, nor me, nor anyone in both families have ever had any mental problems in the past. We don't know what to do about this. Can anyone explain what's wrong with us? Story 15. This happened in 2009, when I was 16 years old. It was the first weekend of summer, and nobody was home when I woke up at around 11 a.m. I grabbed a snack and went down to the basement to watch TV. I had plans to hang out with a friend at 3 p.m. that day. Like I said before, I started watching TV at around 11, knowing I had 4 hours before I was supposed to head over to my friend's house. I had only been watching TV for about 30 minutes when my mom came down the stairs asking me where I'd been all day. I said, "What are you talking about? I've been awake for less than an hour." I look at my watch and see that it's well past 5 in the afternoon. I run upstairs and check my phone to see that I have several missed calls from my friend and my mom. My mom's side of the story is what makes me nauseous when I think about this, even to this day. She was with my little brother at his baseball game from 1 to 3 that day. She and my brother were home when I supposedly woke up and went down to the basement, but neither of them have any memory of even seeing me that morning. When my mom got home at around 3, she checked the entire house for me, including the basement where I had been sitting on the couch watching TV. It's been 10 years, and I still have no idea what happened on that day. It is by far the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and although I talk about it with my family like it's a funny little thing that happened, it genuinely chills me to my bones thinking about it.